Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and I have an awesome video for you today because we are going to be checking out the second of 3 brand new GeForce RTX 40 series supercards to release this month in January. We've already had the RTX 4070 that released on my channel very recently. You can see a review for that card in the banner up above or in the description down below. We've got the RTX 4080 Super launching at the end of the month, and today it's all about this card here, which is the RTX 4070 Ti Super. So why is this card the most anticipated card out there? It is for me, I think. It's a couple of good reasons for it. We get more RT cores, we get more CUDA cores, we get more Tensor cores, and we get more ROPs with this card. So that's a fairly substantial increase in all of those things over the original 4070 Ti. What we also get though with this one, which is what neither of the other cards get this month, is a memory upgrade. And not just a memory upgrade, you get a memory interface upgrade as well. So you've got 16 gigabytes of memory on this card, whereas the original 4080 Ti had just 12 gigabytes. We also get a 256-bit bus for the memory as well. So the previous card, or the older card, should I say, the older 4070 Ti had just 192 bits. So all of those things combined mean that this card is essentially a cut down RTX 4080 rather than just an upgrade of the 4070 Ti. So that makes it super interesting from a future-proofing point of view, from a high-resolution gaming point of view. If you're dead set on getting 16 gigabytes, this is the new card to have. Obviously, NVIDIA does have cheaper cards that have 16 gigabytes. This is the cheapest 16 gigabyte card that NVIDIA has above the 4060 card. So what we'll be doing today is running through a whole bunch of benchmarks in games at all resolutions, well, all the popular resolutions, so 1080p, 1440p, and 4K, to see where the sweet spots are for this card and if it can really handle 4K gaming compared to the bigger guns out there, such as the RTX 4080. 4080 Super we're going to be looking at in about a week or two's time, and of course the 4090 as well. So, and comparing it against a lot of AMD cards, why not? Let's do that as well. So, as we normally do in graphics card reviews. So, a very interesting proposition here from NVIDIA, even more so because it has the same launch price as the 4070 Ti. So we're not looking at 4080 prices here, even though this card is meant to perform close to that graphics card. So that's probably the most important point here, other than the memory increase and etc. It is the fact that this card is going to retail for the same price as its predecessor, which it is replacing in the market. So the 4070 Ti is going to be gone, and this card is going to be replacing it. Now, there's something else I need to mention, and that is the performance numbers that we use today are from this particular graphics card, and it was found to have a performance issue that saw a 5% deficit with this particular MSI graphics card compared to other RTX 4070 Ti Supers. Now, I can't verify that because I've not got another graphics card to actually use in terms of 4070 Ti Supers. NVIDIA has acknowledged the issue and they are working with MSI on a fix, and they did provide a firmware update for this particular graphics card in the lead up to the launch today, which I ran through my testing. It's meant to decrease that deficit from 5% to 3%, I believe. I didn't see any benefit at all in the games and the resolutions and the settings that I use. That could be for a number of reasons. I still don't know what the actual issue was. But whether it was at high frame rates or low frame rates in games that were very consistent between benchmark runs and those that weren't, I didn't see any benefit at all, really. None that was discernible within the usual margin of error of like a frame or two. So it's difficult to come to any conclusions from that, but I just wanted to make you guys aware that this card might be slightly underperforming compared to where it should be. But the only thing I can do for the moment to get this review out today is to say that I will keep tabs on this. I will see if a proper fix that brings it up to normal performance is available in the near future, and I will retest and see what happens then and get back to you. But for now, just be aware that frame rates might be ever so slightly lower than where they are or where they should be. So with that out of the way, we can move on to the testing, but not before I ask you to subscribe to my channel and turn on those notifications so you are notified when I upload new videos. We've got a great video including this very graphics card being installed into a mini-ITX case in the very near future as well, so you definitely want to see that video for a spectacular Fractal Design Terra mini-ITX case using the 4070 Ti Super. And also don't forget to like and comment on this video as well. Liking and commenting just helps punch me up the algorithm and gets me noticed. So don't forget to like and comment. Let me know in the comments what system you're using at the moment. Are you considering an upgrade to the 4070 Ti Super? And let me know what you think of this review in the comments below as well. So without further ado, let's crack on with the benchmarks. My test system includes an Intel Core i9-12900K processor, which is water-cooled and running at stock speed, and that's plugged into an Asus ROG Maximus Z790 Hero motherboard. We also have 32GB of Kingston 6400 DDR5 memory, and we also have a 2TB Solidigm P41 Plus SSD. It's really important to use the latest drivers and software when testing graphics cards, and for that reason I have retested every single NVIDIA graphics card in the graphs since my review of the 4070 Super, because NVIDIA dropped another driver, 551.15 forswear, so I've retested every NVIDIA graphics card in the graphs with that driver because it did change some of the results for the other cards significantly. When it comes to high-end graphics cards, I usually skip 1080p because no one's going to spend $1,000 on a graphics card to game at 1080p. But this time, because the RTX 4070 Ti Super is kind of a mid-range card despite its price, I have included all three popular resolutions in the graphs, but I am still retesting a bunch of other graphics cards, so you may see some at the very lower end absent from the graphs for the time being. Starting off with our first game test then, and Far Cry 6, we have a whole bunch of graphs listed on this page. I thought it'd be easier for you guys looking at all of the graphs for each game rather than flitting through each resolution one by one, but let me know what you think of that in the comments if this is too complicated for you. Always happy hearing about your feedback. At 1080p, we've got the RTX 4070 Ti Super sitting some way in front of the RTX 4070 Ti, not a whole amount, but the RX 7800 XT was slightly faster in this game. This game does tend to prefer AMD graphics cards though. Moving on to 1440p, and we have the 4070 Ti Super outstripping the 7800 XT finally, and it also comes within spitting distance of matching the RTX 4080's minimum 99th percentile, although that card did manage a much higher average frame rate. Going down to 4K then at the bottom left, and we have the RTX 4070 Ti Super offering a reasonable amount extra performance over the 4070 Ti and outstripping the 7800 XT by an even larger amount than it has done before. However, here it did fall some way behind the RTX 4080. Finally, switching on DXR reflections or ray tracing in Far Cry 6, we have the RTX 4070 Ti Super. Again, sitting somewhere ahead of the RTX 4070 Ti, but not massively so, and again sitting between it and the RTX 4080, but with that card a noticeable amount further ahead. Moving on to our next game then, and it's Forza Horizon 5, and at 1080p, ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, we have the RTX 4070 Ti Super some way ahead of the RTX 4070 Ti, but not massively so, while the RX 7800 XT, and bear in mind that this game does love AMD cards, that the AMD card did manage a slightly higher minimum 99th percentile, but was significantly slower on the average frame rate. Moving on to 1440p, and we have some higher end cards thrown into the mix now, so looking at that all important RTX 4080, not that much further ahead on the minimum 99th percentile, but quite a way ahead on the average frame rate compared to the 4070 Ti Super. Similar situation to what we saw before with the RX 7800 XT from AMD, similar minimum 99th percentile, but much slower on the average frame rate. And the Ti Super versus the standard Ti on the 4070s, again, we've not got much between the two cards. Moving on to 4K now then, and the RTX 4070 Ti doing a little bit better here in some situations, eking out a slightly larger lead over the RTX 4070 Ti and holding a large lead over the RX 7800 XT. The RTX 4080 though still remaining elusive with a higher minimum 99th percentile and significantly higher average frame rate, but not significantly so. Our final test is the exact same 4K settings, but this time with DLSS and FSR enabled, and DLSS here comes with frame generation as well in Forza Horizon 5, which is a recent introduction. So obviously NVIDIA having a sizable advantage here, and it's no surprise to see the RTX 4080 and 4090 coming way ahead of everything else. However, the RTX 4070 Ti Super was not able to come close to matching the RTX 4080 in this test, but it did come close to matching the RX 7900 XT, sitting just behind that much more expensive card. Again, there wasn't a huge amount between the 4070 Ti Super and the 4070 Ti, but there was a much bigger gap between it and the RX 7800 XT. Moving on to a personal favourite of mine now then, and it's Halo Infinite in the campaign mode, and at 1080p we've got the RTX 4070 Ti Super here sitting at the top of the graph because I didn't really feel that anything more expensive justified testing at 1080p because you just wouldn't spend much more than $700-800 on a card to game at this resolution. So here though it's, as I mentioned, sitting at the top of the graph, a fair amount faster than the RTX 4070 Ti and having a massive lead over the RX 7800 XT. Moving on to 1440p, and we have the RTX 4070 Ti Super sitting much closer to the RTX 4070 Ti than it does to the RTX 4080, which managed a much higher average frame rate. The RX 7800 XT are way down the graph, and in fact the RTX 4070 Ti Super outstripping the two flagship AMD cards in the 7900 range here, the XTX and the XT, so it's a great result for NVIDIA here, even though the RTX 4070 Ti didn't really offer much over the previous model. Moving on to our final test, and it's Halo at 4K, and the RTX 4070 Ti Super managing to outstrip both the RX 7900 XT and the RX 7800 XT, but the RX 7900 XTX did manage to leapfrog it in this test, while the RTX 4080 was significantly faster. It's also to be said that the RTX 4070 Ti Super didn't really offer that much of a benefit over the RTX 4070 Ti in this game either. Moving on to Old Faithful then, and it's Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, and at 1080p we've obviously cut off a lot of the high-rank cards at this resolution because I don't think testing an RTX 4090 at 1080p is worthwhile because there's going to be so few people out there that are going to be gaming at this resolution using that card. So obviously, the top of the graph, the RTX 4070 Ti Super, and offering a slightly higher average frame rate over the RTX 4070 Ti, but not really that much on the minimum 99th percentile, although it was significantly faster than the RX 7800 XT in this game. Moving on to 1440p now, and the RTX 4070 Ti Super sitting some way behind the RTX 4080 again. The RX 7900 XT though outstripped by the 4070 Ti Super on the average frame rate, convincingly so, but both it and the RTX 4070 Ti managed a similar minimum 99th percentile to the new NVIDIA card. Stepping up to 4K, and interestingly here, the RTX 4070 Ti Super starting to stretch its legs a little bit, and the RX 7900 XTX being its first victim, with the NVIDIA card offering a much higher average frame rate. The RTX 4070 Ti slipping behind a little bit, but still within reach of the new NVIDIA card, while the RTX 4080 some way out in front, but maybe not quite as much as we've seen before. Finally, we have 4K but with DLSS enabled now then, and that gives NVIDIA a bit of an advantage in this game because FSR isn't enabled in Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. So the RTX 4070 Ti Super, again, not really able to offer significantly better performance than the RTX 4070 Ti, and the RTX 4080 offering a much higher average frame rate, even if the minimum 99th percentile wasn't that much faster. But still, it's enough to significantly outstrip any of the AMD cards in this game, but obviously they lack FSR support in Metro Exodus. Moving on to another favourite of mine, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and this game looks absolutely stunning, but is pretty demanding on your system in a number of areas. So starting with 1080p, and the RTX 4070 Ti Super is actually outgunned by the RX 7800 XT at 1080p, but it offers pretty much similar frame rates across the board compared to all of the other graphics cards here. So moving on to 1440p, and I've dropped in a few of the higher end cards into this graph, and here we've got the RTX 4070 Ti Super managing to outstrip the RX 7800 XT on the minimum 99th percentile, if not the average frame rate. But you'd notice how the cards with less memory are the less powerful cards, the RTX 4070 Ti and RX 7600, dropping away at the bottom of the graph there, so clearly some bottlenecking going on. However, the RTX 4080 not really able to offer much extra performance at 1440p, so clearly we've got bottlenecking going on elsewhere in the system, which is what we've seen before. Stepping up to 4K then, and this is where things get pretty juicy. So we've got the RTX 4070 Ti Super, not really offering that much more extra performance over the RTX 4070 Ti and being outgunned by the RX 7900 XT, albeit not by that much. However, it should be worth noting that the RTX 4080 does offer significantly more performance here, while the RX 7800 XT starts to fall away. Our final test in Microsoft Flight Simulator is at 4K, but this time a very interesting mashup between FSR and DLSS. So the game supporting both of those technologies, but NVIDIA with the advantage because it has DLSS 3 support with frame generation, and that is pretty much the only way to significantly boost your frame rates when you have a high-end GPU and the rest of your system is pretty decent. Frame generation is an amazing way to boost your frame rates in this game because it basically removes any other bottlenecks and dumps a whole load more frames per second to your experience. And as we can see here, the RTX 4070 Ti Super offering an average frame rate of 115 frames per second and minimum 99th percentile of 101 frames per second. And both of those things are not that far behind the RTX 4080. In fact, the minimum 99th percentile is exactly the same. Now, again, though, not really offering that much more performance over the 4070 Ti, but significantly faster. In fact, pretty much double the frame rates of the RX 7800 XT, and that's with FSR enabled as well. Our next game is Rainbow Six Extraction, which is a pretty easy game to play, and as we can see at 1080p, the RTX 4070 Ti Super managing a 99th percentile of 173 frames per second. So none of the cards sitting sort of in the top half of the graph here are that far behind each other, so it comes as no surprise that the RTX 4070 Super and RTX 4070 Ti kind of mixing up in the graph there, one with a higher average frame rate, the other one with a slightly higher minimum 99th percentile. But the RTX 4070 Ti Super offering slightly higher averages and minimums there, and the RX 7800 XT again slipping some way down the graph, generally sitting where it should do given its price compared to the new NVIDIA card. Stepping up to 1440p, and again we don't really see that much difference between the 4070 Ti Super and the 4070 Ti, but the results are somewhat bunched here because there's not that much difference again between the 4070 Ti Super and the RTX 4080. However, the RX 7900 XT was significantly quicker, while the RX 7800 XT didn't really sit that far behind, although it may be arguably so on the average frame rate. Our final test in Rainbow Six Extraction is at 4K again, but you guessed it, it's got DLSS enabled and FSR is not available in this game. So the RTX 4070 Ti Super, again not really offering that much extra performance over the RTX 4070 Ti, nearly managing to match the minimum 99th percentile of the RTX 4080, but that card had a noticeably higher average frame rate. Again though, with DLSS enabled, you're talking about a nearly double the frame rates of the RX 7800 XT. Our final game test is Watch Dogs, and at 1080p with ray tracing enabled via DXR, we have the RTX 4070 Ti Super sitting happy at the top of the graph. We have removed a lot of the higher end cards here because I don't think they really warrant testing at 1080p given how few people will be using cards like the 4080 and 4090 at this very low resolution. So not much of a performance difference between the RTX 4070 Ti and the 4070 Ti Super, but the NVIDIA card does have a noticeably higher performance here than the RX 7800 XT. Stepping up to 1440p then, and there's a bit of a bunch of cards around the mid-table from the RTX 4070 Super upwards. The RTX 4070 Ti sitting a little bit behind the newer card, but not by much again, and the RX 7900 XT pretty much sitting level with the 4070 Ti Super. Meanwhile, the RX 7900 XT was a fair bit faster, and the RTX 4080 was significantly faster. Stepping up to 4K then, and again with ray tracing enabled, we have the RTX 4070 Ti Super sitting in the middle of the graph, and here offering a decent amount extra performance over the RTX 4070 Ti. However, it sits pretty much midway between the RTX 4080 and 4070 Ti, so not really getting as close to the RTX 4080 as we'd hoped. It also does manage to match the RX 7900 XT at this resolution, which is a pretty decent triumph here for NVIDIA, and it also manages to massively outdo the RX 7800 XT as well.
Our final game graph then, and it's Watch Dogs 4K, again with DLSS enabled in balanced mode. So the RTX 4070 Ti Super offering a reasonable amount extra performance over the RTX 4070 Ti, but not massively so. Again, it's a long way behind matching the RTX 4080, but it does manage much higher frame rates than the RX 7900 XTX and the RX 7900 XT, those cards lacking AMD's equivalent of DLSS in this game, of course. Our final graph then, and it's system power consumption, so power consumption from the wall as the system as a whole. So nothing really to write home about here. The RTX 4070 Ti Super sitting directly between the RTX 4080 and the RTX 4070 Ti by about 10 watts on either side, drawing 445 watts from the wall, which is similar to the RX 7900 XT, the RTX 4080, as I've said, and the RTX 3080 as well.
So what do we make of the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4070 Ti Super then? Well, first of all, we obviously have the disclaimer whereby this particular card, the MSI Ventus, is suffering from a performance deficit of around 5%. That's when I received it. Then I received a firmware update to reduce that deficit from 5% to 3%, but that's obviously still 3% slower than where NVIDIA claims it actually should be at the moment. So we're still waiting on a fix for that. It's a bit of a shame that I couldn't come to any definitive conclusions today, but we can still come to some conclusions based on the performance that we've got, albeit with the proviso that that's potentially 3% lower on average compared to where it normally sits, even if I didn't see much, if any, improvement moving from -5% to -3%, as I spoke about earlier. So the 4070 Ti Super then, sitting pretty much between the RTX 4070 Ti and the 4080. However, it does tend to sit closer to the former and further away from the latter. The RTX 4080 still a very, very powerful graphics card, which has a distinctive edge over the card that we're looking at today. Now that kind of raises the question, what's going to happen to the gap between the RTX 4070 Ti Super and the next best card, which will eventually be the RTX 4080 Super, which is launching in the next week or two. That is going to replace the 4080. So the 4080 will be no more. That means that the gap between this card and the 4080 Super is going to be pretty wide, and that's going to open up a gap for AMD to potentially capitalize on with price cuts for its 7900 series Radeons. So that's going to be something that I will definitely be watching over the next few weeks. I will also be returning to this card once I get a firmware update to hopefully fix the performance issue, and we can rerun some tests and see where we actually are with it. Over the RTX 4070 Ti, obviously not worth an upgrade from that card. That card is perfectly fine for now. The 16 gigabytes seem to make a small difference in some benchmarks, particularly at higher resolutions, opening up that gap between it and its predecessor. So that's definitely something to watch as well as the future comes around and we have more demanding games that will be using more memory. That is potentially where this card could come into its own, as we usually see with AMD cards that don't perform that great out of the box, but a year or two down the line when drivers are fixed and optimized and we have more demanding games, that's often where we can see AMD cards actually getting a bit of a leap in performance. So I'd like to thank MSI and NVIDIA for dropping over this card today, even if it did seem to have issues out of the box. But we will be back very soon, as I say, with some testing. And we'll also be using this card in a fabulous mini-ITX build coming up very, very soon on the channel. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see this card built into a fantastic Fractal Design Terra mini-ITX case. So we'll be back very, very soon on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you soon.